Welcome to the MMHP and the 989, channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history.
Hello, Michigan music lovers. This is Scott Baker. I want to welcome you to the Michigan Music History Podcast. I am flanked by Michigan music royalty. To the left, Dr. J. To the right, Sir Fred. We cut from just around the block of the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame in Bay City, Michigan, here at Studio 163 in Essexville. And now it's time to grab a favorite beverage, hit the cruise, and take a trip back with us through Michigan's rich music history.
This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Electric Kitsch, located at 2106 Kosciuszko Avenue in Bay City, Michigan. And now, here's your host, Scott Baker.
We are back here at Studio 163. Second season here on the Mid-Michigan Music Podcast Show, MMHP and the 989. And Gary, you just got back to town. How you doing, Dr. J?
Doing great. Good to be back in Michigan. Had an exciting time with Hurricane Ida in New Jersey, but everybody escaped without too much damage done. Although we were lucky. You look, just driving down some of the streets, they were just like a wall of furniture and clothing and rugs and everything that were ruined by the flooding. That was the big thing. It was flooding. It wasn't the winds.
I saw some of Lynn's photos, your wife, and just blew my mind. And it was only blocks away.
Yeah.
Unreal.
We even had a house explode.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah, it's a house that Lynn and I walked by literally every day. It was right by the river, Rahway River Trail, they call it. And that Rahway River, we walk by it every day. It's probably maybe 18 inches deep at its greatest depth where we walk. And with all that rain, it just turned into a raging torrent. But apparently there was a young family about a block away. House had just been rebuilt. They have a child. And luckily they left when the water started getting high. And somehow there was a gas line problem and the house literally exploded. And I mean, we walked by it. When you talk about it was leveled, the foundation, right down to the foundation. And strangely enough, a neighbor had a security camera and caught it on film at the exact moment that the explosion occurred. Somebody was driving by, trying to get back home, driving through the water. And can you imagine that, driving by a house that just explodes? And I mean, parts of the roof were blown across the street. Windows surrounding houses were blown out. Yeah, it was really something.
My Lord.
But
That's
then
like
to see it,
out of the
and actually
movies.
see it, it was incredible.
Oh, my Lord. Well, I'm glad you're here. Glad you're safe.
Yep.
All our prayers out that way. And all the storm.
I even went, I've been deeply involved in doo-wop out there because of the Frankie Lyman tombstone. And I had a chance to go to the biggest oldies and cars show on the East Coast. It's called Lead East. And Lynn and I spent a couple days and nights there. It was a lot of fun. And doo-wop is not dead on the East Coast, let me tell you. Those people are into it in a big, big way.
Too cool.
Yeah.
Too cool. Hey, Sir Fred, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
What's been up with you lately?
Well, I had a health issue, but hopefully it's taken care of.
Good. I know you've been around town, seen you here and there, so I know you're back out and about. So.
Oh yeah, looking for records every day.
Yeah.
How's the book coming, Fred?
Well, because of this health issue, I haven't been really working on it, but I've accumulated a lot more information.
I just got
including Art Shields' acetate. I think I posted it.
Yeah. Well, somebody had sent me, the gal that I talked to you about, somebody named Kitty Story. Bob, have you ever heard of her? And she apparently recorded an album's worth of kind of folk songs with Art Shield. No idea what date it was, but it was folk music. I'm assuming it was probably late 50s, early 60s. That was kind of the height of popularity, that type of music
Hoot
around
Nanny
here.
days.
Yes, definitely. But I was going to tell you, I've got the first copy of my book back.
Oh,
Boy, they do a great job out there.
you went there?
Printing service.
All
Well, you
right.
bet. Yeah. So I've got to go through it and correct a couple things. But gee, I was impressed with what they do out there. It's amazing.
yeah.
Excellent. We'll be getting to see a book then pretty soon. We have a special guest here in Studio 163 that we want to introduce to everybody. This goes all the way back to the 60s, at least the popularity of some of your output. Photography, concerts, mid-Michigan mainly, right? Mr. Bob Darbee?
Yep.
Can we get a microphone in front of you? There you go. You can sit back and just put that mic right there wherever you feel comfortable. So, Bob, thank you for making it back to Michigan. You're got a little break in the action. We're lucky to get you here in the studio to tape you. Can you give us a little bit of the background on some of the artifacts that I know Gary's collected quite a few to put in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame here in the Legends Hall of Fame here in Bay City?
Yes, Gary and I have been talking for 10 years a little bit. And 1960, I came to Bay City as taught at McGregor School and met my wife there, Eileen, at McGregor School. She had a prep hour with another teacher named Octavia McGavrilla. He was a teacher there, and his wife was a teacher in Bangor Township. And the four of us, he was a businessman out of Detroit, and he come up here and bought a trailer park, and then he got that going, and then he had a lot of free time. He started going to Central Michigan at nights, going to school. Next thing you know, he had his teaching degree. But he was always looking to get back into business. And the four of us were looking at a coin-operated laundromat. And within a week, we owned a roller rink. That had just happened. But the old timers will remember the Putty Golf and Roll-Air Rink out by the state park. And we bought that. We tried Hoot Nannies. We were on the way out. Then we had disc jockeys, Bob Dyer, Dick Fabian. They helped us with all the entertainment. And we had a series of garage bands, school kids. They competed. The kids voted. And then WKNX would announce the winner on Wednesday morning after a Tuesday night. Battle of the Bands. Then we bought Tony's Park across the street.
What year was that?
Maybe 64.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Beetle era.
And then we built the giant slide, and we had the merry-go-round, the boat ride, the train ride, the car ride. And we had a pavilion where companies would have their annuals, picnic for their employees. It was great.
It's in a lot of people's memories that grew up in Bay City. Certainly, I know as a kid, this would have been before you and Eileen and Chris and Tavi bought it, but going to Tony's Park was such a big deal. You know, riding the merry-go-round, and of course that train ride. That was a real big one there. But then, you know, when I was in high school, everything centered around Roll-Air, that roller rink. And that was just absolutely incredible. And it was so much fun to go to those things. You know, as a young person, not only for the music, but there were so many people there. It was like a big social gathering. Literally, you would run into walking around the rink, and I think you had a name for it, didn't you? With the kids used to walk around.
Yeah, what was
the Roll-Air Shuffle. Because really there wasn't that much dancing. It was big social thing. And then when you got into the Battle of the Bands, then it was, boy, to see live music, which was a rarity then, in the early 60s. You just, if you had a dance at your school, it was always just a DJ playing records. You never had a live band. And that certainly made stars of, I think I went to every one of the battles in the first year you did in 1964 with the Del Reys, with Ron Cunningham and those guys. Boy, they were big, big stars around the Tri-Cities because of winning that Battle of the Bands. Now, Fred, you went there too, didn't you? Did you go to some of the battles out there?
Just a couple of them, because I lived in Saginaw at the time, and there were dances, team dances, almost every night except Tuesday. And I must have been working or something.
Why did you pick Tuesday nights, Bob, for all the activities out there?
We had roller skating on the other nights, and that was fine. But Tuesday was a slow night. And Bob Dyer and Dick Fabian were instrumental in giving us the idea. We said, okay, we'll be partners. They said, we don't need partners, just pay us, pay us for Tuesday night. And that's the way it stayed for 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah, that just turned into a gold mine.
Yeah.
You have 2,000 kids there.
Oh, yeah.
Regularly.
Yeah.
And it only cost, 25 cents or 50 cents for most of it?
A buck and went to $2.
But that was later, right? When you started to get maybe some of the bigger bands? Yeah.
People you had to pay for, yeah. So.
Well, who came up with the idea of the Battle of the Bands?
Bob Dyer. Bob Dyer was with KNX.
Right, sure.
And I think he's a Hall of Fame disc jockey.
Oh, he's in the Michigan Rock and Roll Legends Hall of Fame. Yeah. So is Dick Fabian.
Yeah.
Those guys were terrific,
And they were good. I mean, they weren't trying to gouge it, or we had the facility and they had the ideas. And it was a great.
And you were really one of the first, I think, weren't you? One of the really early battles of the band in the whole state of Michigan.
Oh, yeah. My partner kept telling me that we had to freeze the name.
Copyright it or?
Copyright it, yeah. We didn't, but they popped up all over.
Well, I know that digging into the history of Roll-Air, had some pretty famous people there before they became famous. Like Ted Nugent performed with a group called the Lords. This was, I think, when Ted was probably in high school and came down to participate in Bay City, because, it was really so successful and so famous. And of course, Question Mark and the Mysterians, before 96 Tears, performed there. And, then later on, you had literally everybody, like the who's who of Michigan rock and roll at those festivals. Of course, Dick Wagner and the Bossmen played there quite often. And, it was great. Now, who did all the booking? Did you guys do that? Or
KNX, Dyer and Fabian, they did. In those days, there was not contracts. It was handshake. Dick and Bob would contact the stars, and they said, "We'll see you on Tuesday." Where do we dress in that trailer there?
Yeah, and you also have the distinction, and actually we have 2 photographs that are going to be displayed at the Historical Museum, Bay County, the very first time that Alice Cooper, the band, ever appeared in Bay City. This would have been, I think, roughly a year before they appeared at the auditorium at John Glenn. But for early 1970, these guys were pretty unusual. Do you remember meeting Alice Cooper and the band, and what were your impressions?
Yeah, that's a good story. My partner, Tavi Gavrila, when he died, it was a big funeral, and school teachers, know everybody, and Alice Cooper was scheduled for that Tuesday night, and it was late afternoon, and Tavi was making popcorn. We made bushels of popcorn so we didn't have time to cook it, during the night. And he's popping popcorn, and he says to me, do you think that we're paying her so much money, why doesn't she come in and say hello? And I looked at him, and I realized that's how much we knew about entertainment. It wasn't our pay. So at the same time, Alice was reaching into the popcorn, and he was eating the popcorn while Tommy was saying that. It was a crack up.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm sure Tommy thought that was the ugliest girl I've ever seen.
I started the funeral with that story, and that relaxed everybody.
And within weeks of this podcast having happened, our videographer and archivist Mike Beatty went down to Detroit, where he had an autograph signing with Alice Cooper, and he happened to record a conversation with Alice about remembering Bob Darbee, and we're now going to share that with you before we continue.
Hey Alice, that one is for Bob Darbee, who owned Roll-Air Rink in Bay City. Do you remember playing at Roll-Air? Yeah.
Back in the day, we played there all the time. Yeah.
Yep, that's for him.
This is for Mike.
That's for me. Yep.
I played every city.
Oh yeah. Thank you.
When I knew I was coming over here, I put my cap on. The people that I remember, question mark, the Mysterians, they were just a bunch of neighborhood kids.
Right.
They played pool at Tony's Park all the time and chase them out of there. And anyway, question mark, Mysterians, Alice Cooper, Amboy Dukes, you remember?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Seger, of course, the Bossmen, Rush, the MC5, that was a good story. Pete Woodman, the drums.
Yeah, right.
Grand Funk, Rationals, Mike Quattro and Susie, SCR,
SRC.
Brownsville Station, Dick Wagner, a few of the people that everybody remembers.
Right. Well, I'll bet Madonna at least went out there and skated.
Well, I don't know.
Well, of course, you would have no idea. But I know she's, was very fond of going out to Tony's Park and Roll-Air when she was staying at her grandmother's house.
Yeah.
So probably one of those little kids out there skating. She would have been too young to go to the, any of the Super Tuesdays or those battles of the band or so on. She would have only been 10 or 11 years old or something like that. But yeah, it was, it was such a popular spot for anybody in Bay City. It was really, really cool.
We had at Tony's Park, the kids didn't have cars, and we knew every kid in town, so they worked there and we fed them, and some of them stayed overnight. We had a big, like a clubhouse. It was something.
Yeah, it's a different times, that's for sure. What made you decide to expand out and do like it eventually grew from the Tuesday night battles of the band, and just a lot of those groups that you just mentioned, those were at what you called, I think, Super Tuesdays, where there actually was like a festival, where you'd have like 8 or 10 bands or something like that.
We pressed it a little bit when we took Thursday too, after a while. I don't know how, a couple of years later. We went Tuesday, Thursday. Rainouts would kill you. Like a ball game. I remember one rainy night, my partner sat out there by himself in a chair in the rain and had whatever group we had him play him a few songs. And then another good story is my wife kept the books, and she wouldn't pay ? She wouldn't write him a check. He wouldn't give his name up, and she said, well, then I'm not writing a check to a ? So I went and got one of the other guys, and we wrote the check to him, and we worked it out.
He hadn't legally changed his name to ? At that point.
She said, I'm not doing it.
What are some of the other fond memories you have of some of those bands you mentioned?
Well, I'll give you the MC5 story.
Yeah.
We had too many bands scheduled for that. We built 2 stages after a while. Knock one down, one's playing, and one's knocking down, setting up, and then back and forth. And the MC5 was the main draw that night out of Detroit. And it got to be late. And I'm going crazy because we didn't have a midnight curfew, but it always broke up about midnight. And the MC5 wasn't going to make it. It's going to be 1 o'clock in the morning before they got on. And state police showed up. And they got me over there, and they said, you've got to tell them to knock it off. They said that the people up in Oscoda, the music was good. They were calling the state police. They were too noisy. And not Oscoda, but Port. Anyway, up. So
there was music was carrying across the bay.
Oh yeah,
that's fantastic.
And
it could have been Oscoda.
Well, what's on the other side? At Port Austin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where Port Austin. They were complaining.
Wow.
So I said, well, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going up on that stage until these. We had a big crowd that night. The MC5 they had the kick out the jams.
Oh, yeah.
Mother effer.
Well, yeah, a lot of times the police were there to bust them if they said that awful F word.
So my partner said, no, don't do that. No, we won't do it. No, we won't do it. And oh my Lord. After the police, I convinced the police to let us keep going. And I convinced them when I said, why don't you go up there? You know what I mean? You tell them. Well, the police didn't have nothing to do with that. So out comes the MC5 about 1 o'clock in the morning, and they let it go just loud, and that crowd went crazy.
Now, did you have to pull the plug on them after a certain amount of time, or did they get to play the whole set?
Whatever they know, we didn't pull the plug. But the worst part was 3 days later, I get a call in the morning. I'm a swim coach, so we have early morning practice before school. And I get a call from the state police post, and they asked me if I could come down to the post for a minute. And I said, well, I can come right now because I'm going to school early. It was early in the morning. And they said, why don't you come after school when you can stay a while. And that's when I wondered what was going on. So I go there after school, and they've got a warrant out, arrest, and the charge was attempting to create a disturbance. That was attempting. That's a key word. And I got a lawyer. My next door neighbor was Dick Smith, famous lawyer around town.
Now, did you get the lawyer before you went in?
No, once they told me. They didn't lock me up, but they did fingerprint me and took my picture.
Ooh.
And now we go to trial. The trial lasted 2 days. And the police came, and there's 6 policemen came to testify what went on and what crime I committed. But before that, I said to the lawyer, what kind of a charge is that? He says, you had any idea what's going on in Detroit tonight? And that was when they were burning down Detroit.
Ooh.
And that was attempting, that was...
Causing a disturbance.
You go right with those guys. So, whoa. So the judge had the policeman testify separately. They brought him in one at a time. And I'm not knocking the police. It was all... But anyway, everybody's story was different, including mine. I mean, what it was all about. And I remember the judge, after 2 days, he said, what we've got here in baseball is called a rhubarb. And what we got here is a rhubarb. Case dismissed.
Wow.
That was the end of it.
Wow.
Now, did you get any, being a teacher, did you get any heat from parental groups or anything like that for running rock shows and
No.
Because, I mean, really, I can't speak for later on, but certainly the times that I went out there, I mean, you rarely even ever saw anybody shoving anybody. I mean, it was always a very peaceful, everybody was having fun, but you didn't get any heat for that at all?
I remember one night we did have a fight, and I got in there trying to break it up, and I lost my shirt, got ripped off. I had to send a kid down to my house to get me another shirt. Beer bottles in the parking lot, very few in those days.
Mm-hmm.
What happened at the end, it got so that everything had to be a contract with the groups. Everything had to, they wanted a better place to dress. They wanted a tent set up for drugs in case that somebody overdosed. The Palace opened. 2 or 3 places in town opened up. Daniel's Den was in Saginaw.
Mm-hmm. You had a lot of competition, in other words. Yeah.
That's how it ended, kind of.
Well, yeah, I think as the music became, as more money could be made, that sort of ended the teen club thing that was such a big deal in Michigan and really all around the country from maybe around 64 to 68. But yeah, you can't, pretty hard to battle Olympia and and these big places that can seat 10 or 15,000 people.
Did any of those big venues that did open, or bigger venues at the time, did they come to you for any assistance or any questions, or ask you how you went and got your entertainment, or did you have any interplay with them?
Oh, you mean the so-called competitive?
Yeah.
Not that I remember.
No.
I think everybody was pretty clear. It was no mystery. I mean, we have good. if you remember, we'd have bus from Gaylord. They'd busload the band and their fans, school buses from different areas of the state.
Wow. You were on the fringe of all these bands that eventually became so well known as History of Michigan Music.
Yeah.
I just was wondering if, after you guys were at the tail end there, if anybody came to pick your brain or ask you questions
Well, I
about how
think,
things
you know,
were going.
it seemed to me, if I remember reading about some of the festivals, that's where Mike Quattro came in, right? He had, I'm trying to think what the name of his agency was.
You had a company, yeah.
Yeah, right. And actually, you could have him come in and, you know, contact the groups and organize. That became big business in itself, you know, so it, in a way, they kind of eased out, you know, the smaller,
Okay,
you know, booking people and so on.
Yeah, that was
they had
part
all
of
the connections.
Yeah, the contracts. And,
Sure.
I mean, we look at the contracts. What shower? We had no shower here. You know, I mean, little things like that.
Yeah, there's no way you
That's
could
what
compete with
changed,
that.
yeah.
Sure, certainly.
I saw most of the contracts for Daniel's Den. They all were pretty interesting.
Yeah, I've seen, you know, a few that are still around. Sometimes you see them in the, you know, museum display.
Right.
So that was Frank Patrick, right?
Yep.
Did you have any contact with Frank Patrick at all?
No, but I know who he was. He's a Daniel's Den guy, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to think the guy that ran the Blue Light in Midland.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that too.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. It was Hirsch somebody. Name escapes me right now. But everybody was kind of doing their own thing. It really didn't interact with the other club owners or anything like that. I'm assuming that.
What year did Band Canyon open?
65.
Oh,
And I think that
Was it?
opened primarily because of the success of Roll-Air.
Oh yeah, and
And same thing with the Blue Light, which opened later on. You know, Roll-Air was a real,
yeah, everybody
you know,
had-
trendsetter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you could say.
They had up in the thumb, Bob Seger from Bay City, a friend of mine. He opened up a certain night up there.
Yeah, I know. Well, we had Gary Asel in here a while back, and what was the Caseville Roller Rink?
Yeah,
And then there were a couple other places. In fact, it seemed like after a while, literally every town around Michigan had some kind of teen gathering place. Yeah, it was just phenomenal. But it was great. What a time, you know.
yeah.
For young musicians, you had all kinds of places to play and, you know, kind of learn your craft and play in front of people. Yeah, it was pretty amazing time.
I don't think we thought much about it at the time. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah,
we were
probably.
busy popping popcorn, getting ready to go.
That's
Yep.
So,
It was just what you were doing at the time.
yeah.
This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Electric Kitsch, located at 2106 Kosciuszko Avenue in Bay City, Michigan. They offer new and used records, including local to Michigan original vinyl and CDs, as well as clothing, electronic equipment, funky household items, music gear, and stringed instrument repair. You can find them on the web or call 989-402-1411.
Do you recall in your mind any video cameras being brought around or any audio recordings being done there? I know there's a lot of photography and I want to get to that with you too, but
Yeah.
I just wonder if you're like, man, we saw somebody videotaping one night or if anything.
I don't even know if there were video cameras with her in
I've got
64, 65.
I've got on my phone videos of all the rides at Tony's, the train going around, the merry-go-round. So there was some.
Well, that was probably 8mm film,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really, there wasn't anything, I think, at that time where you could capture not only the image, but the sound, because all 8mm film was silent, you know, so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I've been seeing such strange things pop up on Michigan memories pages that, 50s, 60s, people that had a camera at home and did some stuff, 8mm, a lot of it, I just wondered if you were like, we didn't allow that, and it happened all the time, or anything like that, or you saw a couple guys do it during MC5 or anything like that.
I don't even ever remember.
Never given a thought.
And I don't ever remember seeing any kids carrying like a little brownie camera or anything like that. I mean, it was all about...
It was just hanging out. Yeah,
hanging out, seeing your friends, listening to the music. Nobody worried about taking a picture of it. It's not like today.
Right.
Phones, man. Literally every second of your life is documented.
Another thing would be cool to find any reel-to-reels, if anything was recorded by the bands or anything back then, But nothing like that.
I would think even live recordings were at its infancy. I mean, I'm thinking in the 60s, boy, there was hardly anything.
Right.
Even big bands like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, there were a few things recorded, but even that, the quality was pretty weak.
Yeah,
even
for sure.
For bands like that.
For sure.
Did you ever see on Lanny Reneke's website, he has a probably 8mm film of the Bossmen.
Yeah.
With no sound.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
but and it's very short too, right? Yeah, I think I probably... Well, I know when I did a class at SVSU, it was on YouTube. And so I put it in the PowerPoint so that they could at least see the Bossmen. And somebody had dubbed one of their 45s over top of the video. So, they weren't, the lips and nothing was matching, but you got to hear the Bossmen and actually see some footage of them. But I think that's the only footage available of that great band. And they were, Dick Wagner and the Bossmen, they were like the Beatles of, mid-Michigan, really.
Yeah.
My wife and I went to, with Dick and his wife, down to Detroit to see Gordon Lightfoot. And I got a lesson I was the only guy there with a butch haircut. And the place was full. And I felt disturbing. I mean, I was nervous. I didn't know what.
Now, you said you did do some stuff with Gordon at one point. How did that come about afterwards there?
Gordon Lightfoot?
Yeah.
Jim Mosby, my roommate before I got married, was the business manager for Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Mm-hmm.
And who was their agent?
Albert Grossman?
Albert Grossman.
And he also had Gordon Lightfoot.
Okay.
And I remember we went to New York and we went to those places that you guys remember, but I don't. And Gordon Lightfoot was part of the...
well, let me see. Chet, was it the Chessmate? Was that famous folk blues club?
That's in Detroit, yeah.
Yeah, in Detroit.
Well, this is New York City.
Oh, New York City.
Yeah.
Okay, Bottom Line.
Bitter End.
Bitter End.
I think we were there.
Yeah, that was a real big folk place. I'm Bob Dylan, and literally everybody played there.
Yeah.
Is that in the Village?
Yeah, it's still going too.
Yeah. So you went out to New York and through Grossman and
just a visit.
Just to visit.
To visit Jim. Jim, I think I said earlier with you.
Yeah.
Jim Mosby was at the Bay City Times.
Yes.
And and then he went with Peter, Paul, and Mary. Then he came back and became the editor of the Kalamazoo Gazette. And Dave Rogers was part of our bunch of guys that lived together. In 1960, nobody was married. And
well, Paul Stuckey dated the daughter of the editor of the Bay City Times.
Okay.
He's from Detroit, isn't he?
And Jim Mosby was working at the Times, I think, at that particular time, where he knew Stuckey from
college. Yeah,
from MSU, right?
And George Stevenson, he knew him too. They were all Michigan State together.
Yeah, wow.
So
small world, right? Yeah, I got a chance to talk to Jim Mosby. I was doing a story on Stookie being at Michigan State because I think, as famous as Peter, Paul, and Mary are, I think very few people know that he attended Michigan State for 3 years and then left before he graduated to go out to New York City. And that's, of course, one thing led to another, and matched up with Mary Travers and Peter Yarrow, and, just became an international star.
Mary used to drive Mosby crazy because Jim had to get all the travel agency, took care of all the business, and getting her out of bed to catch a plane was, well,
it's a chore in itself.
Time with her.
Well, I suppose there could be worse things than, trying to shake Mary Travers out of bed in the morning.
Well,
she was pretty hot stuff back in the day.
He didn't have time for any.
Going back to the recordings and stuff. Tell me a little bit about the photography that you've submitted over the years to some people, and what you may have left or anything, and what happened to the fire story you told me about.
Gary knows that. I don't know. A bunch of years ago, we talked, and I had a lot of pictures. We always took pictures of the winners of the Battle of the Bands and all that, and I loaned them to a colleague. He had a party, and they had a fire, and I lost just what he wanted to have.
Well, actually, and I think I probably told you at the time, I taught with Ellen Visser, who she was our art teacher at Kramer, and she knew Eileen. Okay. And so when I started a rock and roll class at Kramer Junior High, where I was teaching, I wanted to bring in, the Michigan, the Bay City element, and of course, Roll-Air, because the kids, they had a hard time, just imagining something like that, where you could have 2,000 kids all enjoying themselves, listening to the same music and so on. Just like you're telling them about the amusement park, Winona Beach, that we actually had a roller coaster in Bay City, a permanent amusement park. And
scary.
Yeah, that's right. But it was fun. It was fun bringing that stuff in. So Ellen gave me Eileen's number, and she was kind enough to loan me those pictures. And I just went back to school and copied them.
Oh, good. You got some.
Well, I had copies of them, but what I did was, trying to be artistic here. I made collages out of the pictures because, again, I didn't know who any of the bands were. I recognized, Dick Wagner, of course, and the Bossmen, but all these other little bands.
Epics?
That won. Well, the Epics there weren't pictures of the Epics. Oh. And I think they were pretty much the house band of Band Canyon. But anyways, I had these things, and I made these big posters for my classroom. And, so sadly, after I gave the pictures back to Eileen, I didn't make extra copies of the pictures, and I could have given you, those pictures back. They wouldn't have been the photographs, but they were pretty good duplications of them. And then when I went back later on and talked to you, that's when you told me about the fire.
Now, I have seen these, and I can't remember how many they had, but out at Gibbs Drive-In, they've got them on the wall out there. They got a number of pictures. You know where I mean? Across the street from the Roll-Air Rink.
Oh, okay.
It used to be Gibson was the guy's name.
Yeah, now it's Muscle Beach, right?
Yeah, it's Muscle.
Yeah, he had pictures, at least the ones, we used to go there for breakfast. Yeah. He had pictures of Roll-Air, but I didn't see pictures of, like the bands.
The bands, yeah. I don't know what he's got there, but I haven't been there in a long time. But
he had some pretty interesting pictures of how Roll-Air looked, Even, many years before you had purchased it, how different it was. And you could tell by the cars. It was like back in the 40s or 30s, something like that.
Wow.
Speaking of Ralph Muscle, lived next door to me on Gulfview Drive over by Kmart. Well, he bought Tony's Park from Octavian. I was out then. Tabby took over. He sold it to Ralph. Ralph lost it. Tabby got it back. And he sold it again. They couldn't make it go. But I always thought that the big problem there was they kept changing the name. They changed it to Muscle Beach. I mean, can we go to Muscle Beach? What's that? But they said Tony's Park there.
Yeah, that's right.
The little kids would.
Certainly. They had that was the magic name.
I still know it as Tony's Park.
Yeah, I mean, that was, I think, if you're of a certain age, Tony's Park was synonymous with your youth because you went there. It was the amusement park. They didn't have, I guess the Bay County Fair, they would have some rides, but that was only like 1 week in the summertime. Tony's Park was open
every day.
Well, right, and it was always available. And, especially for younger kids, it was really, it was kind of set up for, I think, maybe 6 or 7 and under.
Yeah.
They were all little kiddie rides, really.
I was always asked, well, what happened? How come Tony's Park, what happened? It was always so, so I said, here's a scenario. It's Sunday. Guys drinking a beer and laying on the couch and watching the Tigers. And the kids said, can we go to Tony's Park? Can we go to Tony's Park? Shut up, kid. We're going to Cedar Point next month. Oh, okay. The kid goes back out in the yard.
It lost its little charm
Yeah,
at that
Cedar
point.
Point was nothing when,
Well, right.
nobody knew where it was. Pretty soon, I used to take my swim team down there in a bus once a year. That was a big deal.
Yeah. Well, you coached swimming quite a few years, right? At Handy?
Handy and John Glenn now.
Oh, then you went to John Glenn. Did you teach at Glenn or?
No, I taught at Handy. We had a knowledge failure.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they dropped sports.
Right, I remember that very well.
And I taught school for maybe 12, 13 years. I said, well, that's the end of that. In the meantime, after they called me from John Glenn and the coach was leaving, I said, okay, I'll come and help you out. And I stayed there for a long time.
But you continue to teach at Handy?
Yeah, and then Western.
Okay.
When Handy closed, I went to Western for 6 years.
Then Eileen, did you
She said she was at Central all the time.
Oh, okay.
Didn't she teach at All Saints?
Yes, she was a loaner. You know what I mean?
Okay.
She was paid by Bay City.
Yeah, when I was there, she was a teacher.
Okay. They sent John West and some of those guys. They figured out, rather than have those All Saints kids come over and take special classes, shop, and some that didn't have the All Saints, it was smarter to bring 6 teachers over than to have those kids getting in cars and going back and forth from Central to All Saints.
Well, that was the fun part.
Yeah.
Commuting from North and South Campus in cars.
Yeah, we did a little bit of that in Essexville, too. Kids from St. John's, when, St. John's was still open through the 8th grade, would come to Kramer Junior High. And, we had shop and we had various things that, the parochial school could not offer. Swimming, too, same thing.
Was Winona Beach a casino? When did that close?
Probably mid-50s, maybe.
Really?
Well, I know my dad and mother. My dad was a big fan of Harry Jarkey.
There you go.
I've got
Yeah,
I have a 45.
There's a name from the past.
Yeah.
And boy, I remember them going out there. And I was old enough to stay at home, without a babysitter or something. So I had to be, at least, I would say, 10 or 11
19.
or more. Yeah, 19. I think he's ready.
Well, the Jackrabbit was still going on, or did that close all at the same time?
I think the park seemed to me maybe about 64 or 65.
about right.
No,
Do you remember that, Bob?
no. I came to Bay City in 1950. I did practice teaching at co-op school in the late 50s. And it was gone then.
Okay.
At
Well,
least
I remember when we were in Little League, and this would have been, trying to think what year was my last year in Little League. We had a Little League party out there. They would just give you like a handful of tickets, and you could go and ride the Jackrabbit and the Bullet and all these things till you threw up all the French fries and other stuff that you ate. And that had to be 59, and it was still at least somewhat healthy at that point.
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah, we went there as a class. I don't remember what year, but
You don't remember what grade you were in?
no, I don't.
Okay.
But I remember being on the Jackrabbit. It was really scary. Going out in the water and
Yeah, kids would look at that Jackrabbit today and just laugh.
Right.
Consider about what roller coasters are like today. It was pretty tame, but it was rickety, and there were all those rumors, that it had flown off the track and people had got seriously injured. So after you heard all the stories, all the horrors, you got on the Jackrabbit. It was kind of a scary ride. So.
When our train at Tony's would go off the track, the kids would yell, "Train's off the track!" And it took 4 or 5 fathers and helpers and me to pop them back on there. So I changed the rule. I had a staff meeting. I said, "Don't yell, the train's off the track. Call 17. 17 means come and put the train on the track."
Wow.
There's a million of those crazy stories that happen.
Yeah, did you keep the old tunnel? Was that always pretty much the same? I mean, that was the best part, was taking the train through the tunnel.
We redid it, and the Stoddicker kid made airplanes.
Oh, okay.
Les Stoddicker's son and his friend Cook, they redid the tunnel because it was falling in.
Yeah, it was pretty rickety.
And they also made the greens at the Putty Golf Course. Instead of clay, they poured cement down there and put carpet on it.
Okay.
If you remember playing Putty Golf, there's a kid that swept the...
Yeah. Well, that was a popular spot for, you go out on maybe your first date or something like that, and go out to play putty golf at State Park.
I put some oil in the smoke, try to get the mosquitoes out of there. Oh, brother.
Now, did you have one of those lights where they would electrocute the mosquitoes?
Oh, yeah.
You could hear them. Yeah, I could hear them cracking, as you were out there.
You couldn't even make a dent in them, but it looked like you were trying.
Yeah, that's right.
And we always had the bug spray for you.
Did you have anything to do with entertainment afterwards? After all that was done?
No.
No? That was it.
No.
When did you move away?
I think I sold my portion in about 69 or so.
Okay.
Now, teacher pay being what it was back in the 1960s, it was almost a requirement that you had to find a job in the summertime to supplement your income. Do you remember it all? I started teaching. Let me see. My first year was 1969, and I think it was. Well, I know for sure that I started out. I was only making four figures. You were making. I don't know. It was like $6,000 or something.
My first job was $1,500.
Wow, man!
And the rule was a new car should equal a year's pay or something like that, and that's the way it worked out. And today it's 60,000, and
yeah,
it's still a car.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I know. I remember reading, and you had mentioned it earlier about rainouts and what a disaster that could be. And I'm trying to think if it was. I know Dick Wagner was quoted in the newspaper, and I guess because it was raining, the Frost, which was his band at that point in '69 or '70, only got to play about 10 or 15 minutes because of the weather. But you had made the comment in the paper that you had really taken a bath on the on the concert.
I remember reading that
because it rained all day long, and of course a lot of people that would have been there and would have bought tickets.
That's the one we called Super.
Yeah, Super Tuesday or one of those festivals. Yeah. But I don't know. It seemed to me that maybe the figure was mentioned that you had lost. I don't know. Was by today's standard, it wouldn't seem like it was much at all.
Yeah.
But when you're making only a few $1,000s and you lose $1,000, that's a major hit. Mm-hmm. But mostly, it was very profitable, I suppose, for you guys during summertime.
Yeah. It was always a thought that my partner, who was older than me, that he would eventually, I would buy him out. And when I gave him the figure, he didn't accept it, and I pulled the old. Well, then you give me that. I'll make you the deal. You be the
seller, and I'll be the buyer.
And he did, and he got caught in the drugs, the Cedar Point, changing the name, selling it, getting it back. I felt bad for him, but he came out of it okay, because he sold all those pinball machines to a nice profit. But that didn't mean that he got back 2 years or 3 years of misery.
Yeah.
But we've been friends forever, but never that kind of a problem.
Yeah, and maybe the last time I saw you was when I interviewed Chris Gavrilla.
Okay.
And you came over to her house.
Okay.
And, I was doing some story on it must have been on Roll-Air. And, nice folks. Actually, I knew their son, Dan, pretty well.
Oh, yeah. Great kid.
Yeah.
I talked to Eddie on the phone. He's out in Houston. He has a very successful restaurant out there. And Chris went out, and that's where she passed away.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was a sad.
She was 90-some years old.
Yeah, she was actually still was doing pretty well last time I talked to her. Looking good and looking pretty healthy. Yeah. Yeah, that drug thing, that became kind of the kiss of death to a lot of the teen clubs.
And
it was a lot easier to control alcohol than the drugs.
What do I know about drugs? Nothing,
Yeah. Yeah, how times change, for sure.
So today, you wouldn't even know that the Roll-Air was even there.
No,
I was by it the other day, and again, because I do my walking out there.
The state, he made out, the state bought it all.
Right.
All the property.
Yeah, but it'd be nice to have a
plaque.
A plaque, yeah. I think that Bay City has really missed out on that. I ended up having to do one myself to put one on 405 Raymond Street to designate where 96 Tears was recorded. But, there's nothing, for example, Madonna, where the place where she was born in Bay City, the house where she spent so much time up until she was 12 or 13 years old over on Smith Street. And, even Grand Funk Railroad being formed in Bay City at the site of Delta Promotions. I mean, there's all kinds of different things that they could be done, but the city just hasn't, not interested in that kind of stuff, I guess. I don't know.
Was Delta Promotion around when the Roll-Air dances?
Well, that was actually the owner or one of the owners of Delta Promotions. The big guy was Bill Kehoe. Did you ever run into him?
Yeah.
And Kehoe was one of the owners of Band Canyon.
Yeah.
So Delta Promotions, everything was funneled toward Band Canyon. He became, he started that business to book bands. And so, he represented the Epics, for example. So they played there all the time. And later on, when the Del Reys changed and Ron Cunningham dropped out of the picture, and the surviving members, what they call them? The Shepherds. They went on as the Shepherds. Bill Kehoe represented them and got them their first recording contract in Detroit. So he was kind of a mover and shaker, but I'm sure he looked at you as the competition. He wasn't going to probably do anything for you to speak.
And that was late 60s?
Yeah.
Mid-60s?
Well, he started it in 65 because that's when Band Canyon started.
Okay.
And so then he sold Band Canyon, he and his partners. Trying to think of the other guy, Lemaire.
Lemaire, yeah.
Yeah, they were the co-owners. They sold, I think, in 1968. And then I think Lemaire got out of the business, but Kehoe kept Delta Promotions. And then he's the guy that got into the fake zombies thing where he was putting these bands on the road purporting to be the famous hit-making group, but they were really imposters. And so we got into Bay City's first big rock and roll scandal when Rolling Stone magazine printed an expose.
That's news to me.
Oh, it's a pretty fascinating story, I'll tell you.
Well, how did the guys from ZZ Top?
He hired them. Somehow he learned about them. They were really a Texas band, but they were good enough that they were playing in clubs around, and supposedly they were playing in Florida, and somebody that knew Kehoe recommended them to come to Bay City, and their job was to go out on the road saying they were this English band, the Zombies, but really they were a Texas blues band. And two of the guys, the drummer Frank Beard and the bassist Dusty Hill, when they quit being the Zombies and went back to Texas, they formed ZZ Top.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's all part of like Bay City's got this interesting rock and roll history that's, that of course Roll-Air is a very big part of that, but there's all kinds of little elements going on here. So we're hopefully the museum is going to bring some of this out. That's my goal. But I've got to get with your son about what he's got left, because we want to do something on Roll-Air, put up some sort of a pictorial display. But, again, the problem was a lot of the pictures were lost. And so we'll just have to see. He's got your materials, right?
He's got a lot of my material. He took me out and showed me my corner in his garage.
Oh, okay.
I said, I'll see you in a minute.
Well, Mike's son, Matt, is, we're going to go over there. I don't know your your son Mike at all. So Matt is going to be the go-between, and we'll get over there and see what he's got, how much I can get him to let us use at the museum.
You might find some of my underwear too.
Well, we're not that desperate, Tom.
Then you have to come home and sign autographs.
If it was Madonna's, now that's a different story entirely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Bob, for coming to the show.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and I'm going to leave you guys here and catch a plane to
Florida.
hot weather here.
Yeah. Well, you know, you've started a lot of Michigan events right out of the middle of the hand, and Bay City was a huge part of that. And hopefully, we're going to get all that we have left to display for Gary for the Hall of Fame. And just having you on here is very essential, and we thank you for your time.
And I know Gary's worked hard at it.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of fun.
It's a thing of love, but
Well, yeah, it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a passion project.
Yeah.
okay, thank you. Thanks,
Thank you, Bob.
everybody.
All right.
All right.
Thanks again, Bob.
We'll talk to you soon.
The MMHP is hosted on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and our own Libsyn podcast site. You can also search MMHP989 on Facebook for up-to-the-minute information, as well as both Dr. J and Sir Fred's album picks of the week, posted every weekend. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, and the Electric Kitsch at electrickitch.com.
This podcast wouldn't be here without special help from Studio 163's Alan Garcia, our podcast videographer and wingman, Mr. Mike Beatty, MMHP tagline specialist, Mr. Eddie Switek, and of course, Gary Johnson, Fred Rife, the Electric Kitsch, and all of our special guests, and especially you listeners. We want to thank you.
You've been listening to the MMHP and the 989.